Chapter 2. The Sky Explodes. In the shattered silence after the blast, Tsutomu Yamaguchi clawed his way out of a shallow trench, half blind and dazed. The intense flash had seared into his retinas like a branding iron, and all he could see were spots of white and black. His skin felt raw. The left side of his body, the side that had faced the blast, was scorched, his forearm peeling in strips, his cheek blistered and smoking. But he was alive. He had been less than 2 miles from the epicenter of the atomic explosion, an area where almost everyone else had died instantly. Why he survived was a matter of seconds, inches, and sheer chance. A concrete wall and the furrowed edge of a trench had absorbed the worst of the pressure wave. The soil may have protected him from the fireball. No one really knows. All around him, Hiroshima was gone. The street he had walked every morning for 3 months was now an unrecognizable ruin. Houses had collapsed into smoldering piles of timber and tile. Telephone poles snapped like twigs. Fires were erupting everywhere, not in isolated blazes, but in great sweeping firestorms that sucked oxygen from the air and turned people into shadows on the pavement. Open quote, everything was flattened, Yamaguchi would later recall. The heat was unbearable. I didn't know what had happened. Close quote, the shock was so complete, so total, that he thought the sun itself had fallen. A city turned to ash. The blast from Little Boy unleashed energy equivalent to 15,000 tons of TNT. Temperatures at the epicenter reached 4,000 degrees Celsius, 7,200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt steel and incinerate human flesh in an instant. In a single moment, Hiroshima's population was reduced by tens of thousands. Survivors stumbled through the smoke like ghosts, blackened, naked, bleeding, their skin hanging in long, ribbon-like sheets from their arms. Many were silent, too stunned to scream. Others wailed incomprehensibly, calling for family who had already been vaporized. It was not war. It was something older and more terrifying, like a punishment from the gods. Yamaguchi wandered through this nightmare in shock. He found 2 co-workers from Mitsubishi, also injured, and the 3 men began to stagger toward the company's local office in hopes of finding shelter. Everywhere they turned, there was death. He saw children burned so badly they were mistaken for bundles of charcoal. Bodies lay face down in rivers, their skin split from the blast wave. A woman begged him to find her husband. When he returned, she had collapsed and died where she stood. Open quote, it wasn't a city anymore, he said. It was a flat wasteland, a burnt field. I had no idea what had happened to me or what had happened to the world. Close quote. Nightfall over the ruins. By dusk, Hiroshima was still burning. The fires merged into a vast red glow that could be seen for miles. Smoke hung in the air like a veil. The smell of burned wood, flesh, and chemicals filled the lungs of the living. Yamaguchi and his colleagues found temporary refuge in the ruins of a factory office, the walls partially standing, the roof half collapsed. They wrapped themselves in scraps of fabric and tried to treat their wounds with what little they had. No doctors, no bandages, no clean water, just the ashes of the city around them. And above it all, the mushroom cloud still lingered in the sky. It would later be described as beautiful, an unnatural spiral of white and gray rising into a turquoise sky, elegant in its shape and monstrous in its meaning. For hours it hung there like a banner, as if to mark the beginning of a new age, the atomic age. Yamaguchi spent the night awake, curled on the floor, in agony. His skin burned with every movement. His ears rang with the pressure of the blast. And something worse crept into his bones, a sickness he didn't yet understand. Radiation. A train out of hell. By dawn, the air was still choked with soot, but the fires had started to die. Yamaguchi and his colleagues decided they had to leave the city before disease, dehydration, or worse, killed them. To their astonishment, one of the rail lines was still operational on the outskirts of the city. The 3 men hobbled for hours through the ruins, passing corpses and piles of rubble. At one point, Yamaguchi had to step over what had once been a schoolyard, now filled with the burned remains of children and teachers. When they reached the train station, a miracle. A locomotive was waiting, half full of wounded evacuees. It was headed west, and as if fate still had another turn to take, that train would bring Tsutomu Yamaguchi back home, to Nagasaki.